You know what's crazy, man, when you really think about this idea that peace doesn't come from control or dominance, but from surrender. It hits different. Like, it sounds so simple at first, right? But the more you sit with it, the more it flips your entire concept of strength upside down. Because our whole culture is wired around control. Control your money, control your body, control your image, control people, control outcomes. Everything is about domination, win, conquer, crush, outperform. But that's not peace. That's tension. That's pressure. That's like you're constantly trying to hold the whole damn world together with your own hands, and you don't even realize your knuckles are bleeding from the grip. When Charlie said peace comes from surrender, that wasn't weakness talking. That was someone who's lived the chaos, who's touched both sides of life, the extreme highs and the dark, ugly lows. He's not preaching from a mountain, man. He's crawling from the ashes, saying, I tried the other way and it broke me. That kind of surrender isn't giving up. It's letting go of the illusion that you're the one in control of everything. And the wild part, that's literally what Islam means. Submission to God. Not submission in a fearful way, not like bowing to a tyrant, but surrendering your ego, your constant need to dominate, your obsession with being the one who decides everything. That's deep, bro. That's real human peace when you stop fighting the current and start flowing with it. We think freedom is doing whatever the hell we want, but real freedom is the moment you stop needing to force everything. That's the paradox. Surrender is power. It's not about losing control, it's about finding alignment. Like, imagine you're fighting a river, trying to swim upstream all your life, and one day you realize the river's not your enemy. You turn around, let it carry you, and suddenly everything feels lighter. That's surrender. That's what he meant. And it's wild to think that a guy like Charlie, who's been through madness, chaos, ego, and fire, would find peace in that word, submission. That's not just religion, that's realization. You know, man, the more I think about it, the more it's like, how insane is it that we've built a whole civilization around resisting surrender? Like, we celebrate the guy who never bends, who never backs down, who's always fighting for control, right? But look at what that actually does to people. They get eaten alive by their own expectations. Everyone's burnout, anxious, trying to prove they're in charge of something that was never really theirs to begin with. You ever notice how peaceful people usually aren't the ones chasing dominance? They're the ones who've let go. There's this quiet energy about them, like they're not fighting the universe anymore. I've met fighters, soldiers, monks, scientists, people from all walks of life, and the happiest ones, man, they all have that same thing in common. They've surrendered. Not in a weak way, but like they've accepted that they're part of something bigger. And when Charlie talked about that, about Islam meaning submission, it's not about oppression. It's not about rules. It's about recognition. Recognizing that you're not the center of the universe. You're a participant, not the director. That's powerful. Because the ego wants to be God. It wants to control. It wants to decide who wins and who loses, who lives and who dies, who's right and who's wrong. But the soul, man, the soul just wants peace. And peace comes when you finally stop trying to play God and start connecting with God. That's what I think Charlie was trying to say. Like, dude lived on the edge of insanity for decades. Fame, power, addiction, sex, chaos. He had it all. And yet none of it filled the void. You can't fill a spiritual hole with material stuff. It doesn't work like that. The more you try, the deeper it gets. Until one day you realize maybe the answer isn't more, maybe it's less. Maybe peace doesn't come from adding things, but from removing the noise. That's surrender. It's when you stop chasing and start trusting. And it takes guts, man, real guts, to let go in a world that tells you to keep holding on. Most people are terrified of surrender because they think it means losing control. But what if that's the only way to actually find it? It's funny, man, because when you talk about surrender to most people, they think you're talking about weakness. Like, oh, you're giving up. You're quitting. You're letting life walk all over you. But it's actually the total opposite. It takes insane strength to surrender. You have to have gone through enough chaos to realize that your control is just an illusion. You have to have seen life punch you in the face enough times to say, all right, maybe I'm not the one driving this ship. That's what Charlie figured out. It wasn't philosophy to him, it was survival. He lived the kind of life that breaks most people. The fame, the scandals, the addiction. He saw what happens when ego becomes your religion. When you start worshiping your own image, and then out of nowhere, this man starts talking about surrender and Islam, about peace through submission, and you can't help but think, maybe he actually got it. Because we've all been there. Dude, we've all had moments where we try to control everything, relationships, career, money, and it just keeps slipping through our fingers like sand. You tighten your grip and it slips faster. But when you stop forcing it, when you let it fall where it's supposed to, somehow things start aligning. That's the part that's hard to explain to people who haven't felt it. It's not logical. You can't measure it. It's spiritual. When you surrender, you're not saying, I'm done. You're saying, I trust. You're saying, I'm not the one holding the universe together. And man, that changes everything. You start to move differently. You stop trying to win every argument. You stop trying to prove your worth. You stop trying to own peace. You just live in it. And I think that's why Charlie's words hit so hard. Coming from a guy who's seen every kind of chaos a human can endure, for him to say peace comes from surrender, that's not a theory. That's testimony. That's like a warrior coming back from a lifetime of battles and saying, the real fight was with myself. And if you've ever been through some real dark nights, depression, loss, failure, you know exactly what that means. You can't beat life into submission. You have to let it humble you before you find peace in it. You know what blows my mind, man? How the world today almost laughs at the idea of surrender. Like, people think enlightenment means mastering life, controlling every outcome, being 10 steps ahead of the universe. But that's not how it works. Real peace, real wisdom, it's when you stop needing to dominate the moment. Think about nature. A tree doesn't fight the wind, it bends. A river doesn't argue with the rocks, it flows around them. But humans, man, we're the only species arrogant enough to think we can outsmart reality. And when Charlie said that peace comes from surrender, and that Islam literally means submission to God, that's the most poetic full circle thing ever. Because this guy who represented rebellion in its purest form, the drugs, the chaos, the I'm untouchable attitude, ends up realizing that control is the real prison. You can feel it in his tone, bro, like he'd found something beyond the noise. Because deep down, we all crave that quiet. You can have all the fame in the world, all the attention, all the dopamine hits. But when the lights go out and it's just you and your thoughts, that's when you realize how much chaos you've built inside your own head. And Islam, the concept of submission, it's not about losing power. It's about aligning yourself with something that already has it. It's like recognizing that the universe isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. And once you see that, man, everything shifts. You stop trying to change the world just to fit your preferences. You start working on your own spirit. You start fixing the noise inside instead of blaming the noise outside. It's almost scary how right he was, because look around, everyone's trying to dominate everything. Online, politics, religion, relationships, it's all about control, image, power. And yet people are more depressed than ever. Because you can't control your way to peace. You can't buy your way there. You can't hack it. The only door to peace is surrender. Not surrendering to people, but to the truth, to that divine order, to God, whatever you want to call it. And it's wild to think that Charlie Sheen, of all people, might have understood that better than most. That's what makes it so hauntingly beautiful. What's crazy, man, is that the word surrender used to sound soft to me. Like something you do when you've got no fight left. But when you look at it through this lens, through what Charlie was trying to express, you realize surrender is the ultimate act of strength. Because it means facing reality without flinching. It means admitting you're not the center of the universe, that life doesn't owe you anything, and that everything that happens, even the pain, might have meaning. That's heavy, bro. Because think about it, we live in a culture that tells you to manifest everything, to be the master of your destiny, to take control, to hustle till you drop. And sure, some of that's good. It gives you drive. But what it doesn't teach you is when to stop, when to step back, when to say, okay, this isn't mine to control. That's the wisdom that's missing. And that's what Charlie seemed to find near the end. Like, he wasn't preaching religion, he was realizing truth. That peace and surrender aren't opposites, they're the same road. And when he mentioned Islam, man, it wasn't about a label, it was about the meaning, submission to God. The idea that peace comes not when you dominate, but when you align. That's a concept ancient, timeless, and universal. It's something every great thinker touched at some point, from Stoics to monks to Sufis, all saying the same thing: let go of ego, or it'll eat you alive. You see it everywhere today. People with everything still feeling empty, celebrities with money, fame, power, and yet they're miserable. Why? Because they've mastered the art of control, but never learned the beauty of surrender. You can control your schedule, your image, your followers, but not your soul. That's why when you hear Charlie's words, it feels like more than a quote. It's almost prophetic. Like he was saying, you guys are chasing the wrong thing. And I think that's why it hits so deep, because we all know it's true, but we're too scared to admit it. We don't want to surrender because surrender means trust, and trust means vulnerability. But maybe that's the only way we'll ever get real peace back. Not through dominance, but through divine submission. You ever notice, man, how life has this crazy way of humbling you right when you think you've got it all figured out? Like, you could be on top of the world, everything's working, money, fame, love, health, and then boom, one thing happens, and suddenly you're reminded that you're not in control of anything. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. That's what surrender really is. It's when you stop fighting that truth. And when Charlie talked about Islam, about peace through submission, I think he wasn't talking about some abstract religious ritual. He was talking about that exact human moment. When life breaks you just enough to make you listen. Because pain has this strange way of turning arrogance into awareness. It cracks the ego open. And through that crack, light comes in. That's what surrender does. It lets the light in. And the more you fight it, the darker it gets. It's like trying to hold your breath forever. You can't. At some point, you have to exhale. You have to let go. And the second you do, you realize you were suffocating yourself the whole time. That's how most people live, holding on so tight they forget how to breathe. And I think Charlie's words, man, they weren't just about his journey. They were a mirror for ours. This world is obsessed with being right, being powerful, being seen, but the real power is in stillness. The real courage is in silence. The real peace is in letting go. Because surrender isn't saying, I quit. It's saying, I trust that there's something bigger at play here. That's the message. Peace doesn't come from control or dominance. Those things exhaust you. They drain your soul. But surrender, that's where the magic happens. That's when you align with the rhythm of the universe, with God, with truth. And it's poetic that a man like Charlie Sheen, who once symbolized chaos, ended up finding clarity in that. Like life took him through every extreme just to show him the middle path. And that's what makes it beautiful, man, that no matter how far you go, how wild you live, there's always a moment when the noise fades and the truth whispers the same thing: let go. Because maybe that's where peace has been hiding all along. Not in control, not in dominance, but in surrender.
Yeah.